I'm Maria De Sassi, and I'm an architect.
Amy Moxley, architect.
Sue Oliva, historian.
Sarah Gross, anthropologist and archaeologist.
Will Hornaday, Albemarle Park, local historic district.
Andy McDonald, architectural historian.
Alexander Ellenbogen, architect.
Janice Ashley, legal advisor to the HRC.
I'm Alex Cole, I'm staff liaison to the HRC. We have Haley Mahoney here with us. She works in the planning department and is going to be helping out with HRC's work for the time being.
We will now consider the minutes from the October meeting of the HRC. The minutes include findings of fact and conclusions of law. Are there any corrections? Do we have a motion?
Hearing none, I'd like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from October and the finding of facts.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We will now begin the evidentiary hearings for the items listed on the agenda. As a quasi-judicial proceeding, the HRC is not setting policy, nor are we soliciting public opinion on the desirability of an application. The HRC hears and considers evidence presented and applies the standards set forth in the guidelines and standards of the specific historic district for that application. The HRC must make its decision upon competent, material, and substantial evidence to determine the facts of the hearing. The HRC will use judgment and discretion to apply the standards contained in the relevant guidelines to the facts. The commissioners, in voting for an item, will not have a fixed opinion, not susceptible to change, have a conflict of interest, have engaged in ex parte communication regarding the application. Rules for speaking. This meeting is open to the public, but participation is limited to interested parties who wish to provide comment or testimony regarding the proposal. Now we will move to our first public hearing item. Are you guys going to speak?
Did we do swearing in?
I'm sorry.
Did we skip the swearing in? I'm sorry, I'm not looking at this.
We did momentarily skip it. We're going back now. If you're intending to speak today, will you please come forward and raise your right hand?
You guys they don't have to be sworn in because their item's not quasi-judicial, right, Janice?
This one?
No, the first one. They're here for the landmark.
Are you here from Montford?
Yes.
Okay, can you come, I need to swear you in. Can you come forward, please? And yeah, and raise your right hand. Hello. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the information you present during the hearing for a certificate of appropriateness or preliminary subdivision approval before the Historic Resources Commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I have to be sworn in too.
Okay, I'm sorry. Alex, are you ready for your?
Yes. Are we to that point? Sorry, I don't have the script in front of me, so.
Okay, we are.
Okay. I'm going to be so quick with this one, I didn't even print out a hard copy of my staff report. This application is for 230 Cumberland Avenue in Montford, and the application is for a solar array. I'm just going to go through a couple of slides here. So on the left is the picture of the front elevation from Cumberland Avenue. On the right-hand side, you can see that this lot is fronts on both Cumberland and SoCo. And so that's the reason why this application is coming to you instead of being staff level review, which is typically how we review solar applications, is because the panels are on the portion of roof facing SoCo Street. However, if you drove by this house or looked at Google Street View or all of the above, you can see that really this, because of the way the house is sited up on this hill and how tall the structure is, the panels will pretty much be not visible at all. And so what you're looking at here is looking straight on at the rear elevation, and the right-hand side is the roof plan. So the bottom of the plan is facing Cumberland, and then Where the blue panels are, that is the portion of roof that slopes down towards Soco Street. And this is just a little bit of a different angle, so you can see where that slope section of roof is. So we've had another application like this in the past few years or so, where it was a similarly sided house, where it was just more of a formality to bring to the commission because of the way the standards are written to say visible, potentially visible from a primary right-of-way. So that's why this is before you today, but I'm not noting any concerns. So, any questions for me?
No question for Alex, okay.
Okay.
Actually, I have one question. On the plan, it refers to a future low-profile solar array.
Mm-hmm.
What we are approving is what's in front, what's shown on the screen right now, which is the 2 layers. That is not the future low-profile solar array. So I want to be clear that what we are approving is that, and not necessarily approving the future installation of another array.
Right, if you read the CA request, it's written to say the number of panels. So
Okay.
you're only approving, I think it's 14 or 16 panels, I can't remember exactly, but it's written into the request, so.
Okay, 14.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions for Alex?
Okay, thank you. Do you want me to pull up any other documents for you? No, I just want to help you navigate if I have the slides up that I just, grab stuff out of your application and put in my slideshow, but we've got your whole shebang that you submitted, so I can pull that up if that's helpful.
Okay, am I to present something?
No, you can just address the commission and introduce yourself, offer to answer questions.
Okay, sure. So I'm the owner. I'm Donald Nicholson. I've been before the HRC commission 3 or 4 times. So yeah, just want to put 14 solar panels on the roof. Happy to answer any questions about it.
Any questions for the applicant?
Okay. Do I need to do anything further? Okay,
No, thank you.
thanks.
I'll open the floor for public comment. No public comment. Floor is closed for public comment. Any further discussion, commission? Why approve today?
If there's not, I could make a motion.
Okay.
Chair, based upon the evidence presented to the commission, including Exhibit A, application, plans, and specifications, 9 pages. Exhibit B, Google Street Images, 3 pages, added by staff November 2nd, 2023. Exhibit C, project description, received October 31st, 2023. A busy day in Montford, October 31st. I move that the review of subject property by all members accept. I move that the commission approve the certificate of appropriateness based on the following. 1, that the application is to install 14 81.9-inch by 40 by 0.6 inch by 1.38 black Duo Q-Peak Duo solar panels on the uppermost portion of the western facing section of the roof. All work will be completed in accordance with the approved and attached drawings and plans. All permits, variances, or approvals as required by law must be obtained before work may commence. The design standards for sustainability and emerging technology found on pages 80 through 81 of the Montford Historic Design Review Standards adopted April 14th, 2010 and amended December 9th, 2019 were used to evaluate this request. This application does meet the design standards for the following reasons. Solar panels will be located as inconspicuously as possible, and there will be no impact to historic character defining features. B, while panels will be on a portion of the roof facing the primary right-of-way, they will have limited visibility due to the topography of the site and the siding and height of the house. C, solar panels will be mounted flush as possible to the roof and will not extend beyond any roof edge. Number 4, that the actions and improvements proposed in the application before us for a certificate of appropriateness are congruous with the special historic character of the Montford Historic District.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Based on the foregoing findings and for the reasons set forth therein, I move that a certificate of appropriateness be issued without conditions.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
So I don't have a presentation for this because usually we normally only give staff reports for when we're making a recommendation to you all on the actual designation. But this, where we are at the stage with the landmark, that's in, sorry, we're in other business now, let me just pull up the draft application so we can have at least a photo in front of us. So to back up in our landmark review process, we've got a vetting portion of it where we're still in the preliminary application mode. So we do that to help applicants so that they can elect themselves whether or not they want to incur the cost of a full designation report, because sometimes it's more practical for the commission to say, not sure if this is a great candidate, but you can proceed with the report, or sure, it's a great candidate and it's clear to proceed, that they would want to proceed with the report. It's really just meant to be a help to applicants. So some of us were able to make a site visit a couple weeks ago, and part of what the site visit is for is to get a better understanding of the integrity piece of things. So if you look in the design standard folder, in the commissioner folder, that's where the landmark criteria is in there. If you don't have that in front of you, you might want to pull it up so you can refresh your memory. But essentially, the building has to demonstrate that it has historic significance, either with association with a person that's important to local history, events that are important or significant to our local history, architecture and design, or history associated with prehistorical events, I think, is the 4th one or 5th one in there. And it has to have integrity. And then there's a whole list of items in integrity. And it doesn't have to have integrity in all those categories. It says that it should have at least some of them, or as many of them as possible. So those are things like workmanship, feeling, association. It can't be just feeling and association. You have to be able to tangibly visually see or experience what the building is being nominated for, being historic, especially historic for. So for example, if it were being nominated for specifically for architecture, which is one of the things I think that was put forth in the summary at the end of the application, then it would need to have architectural integrity. So meaning the building can't have changed a whole lot over the years to maintain the integrity, or it could have changes that contribute to the architectural history of the building. So that's one part of our investigation and looking at the site. This building also has in its list of things that it's significant for as being a civil rights era space. That's certainly an important part of the equation. I think one tricky thing with that is that the original lunch counter where the sit-ins took place is no longer within the space. So the purpose of today is for all of us to just talk through all of this and get a sense of your feedback to the applicant on whether or not you think that this is a likely candidate for designation based on the information they've gathered for us so far and the physical inspection of the building. And so it's just an opportunity for discussion and feedback at this stage. So the applicant and the property owner are both here and ready to hear your thoughts. So I'm personally really kind of, this is one where, we've had one other one in my time with this commission that was, I wasn't sure whether or not how I viewed it in terms of what my feedback to the applicant was. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this one. We've got a lot of really wonderful commercial buildings downtown. Are all of them especially significant to meet landmark status? I think this one does have certainly some, what's the right word? It's been a long day, and the word I wanted to use, compelling aspects to it.
So it's the interior and exterior.
Correct. Which is, just so you all know, with landmarks, an applicant or property owner isn't required to include an interior in the designation. And, you know, it's interesting, I was having this conversation with A&E one day about, you know, like, I'm trying to think, for example, when the Princess Anne Hotel, if you're familiar with that building, when it came through for landmark designation, the interior is largely intact, but they chose not to designate the interior, include the interior in the designation, so they can do whatever they want to the interior. So then how much do we get in the weeds on integrity on the interior if we're talking about architecture? But again, it's kind of tied back to what if it is like an event or association with a person, what about that? What about the property conveys that history to you if you're physically in the space? So anyways, it's complicated. It's the long answer to my thoughts on this discussion. So I think just helpful for us to talk it through as a group and hear any questions, et cetera, from the applicant, if that's okay with you all. Okay.
Madam Chair, would you like to hear from the applicant about their intent, the interest in and goals for, or reason behind the request for local designation? Sure. Would like to hear a little bit from y'all about why you're interested in the designation.
Do they need to be sworn in?
No, it's not close.
Okay.
Come to the mic, though, and introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Scott Serkin, current owner of the Woolworth Building and have been since 1997. So the original restoration work on the building, we did receive 2 Griffin Awards for it, exterior and interior. Kept complete integrity of the building as it once was. Granted, now we've had Woolworth Walk operating in there for 21 years now. None of that condition is permanent. It's all just interior vestibules, if you will. A year after opening that, so in 2001, reconstructed the lunch counter in the original space it once was. Had a lot of great feedback from the city and the town and the NAACP with some mock sit-ins with their next generation and just the history there. I personally think the building needs to be preserved as it is. Exterior, it already is. Interior, we did accomplish 3 years ago loft apartments on the 3rd floor, which were just the administrative area and storage facility to supply the department store downstairs. Just an idea there, a 18-wheeler would back down the alley and unload all their goods into a freight elevator, which still exists and is operating original and has a monthly service still. They would bring all their product up to the 3rd floor where it would be checked in and distributed, and then the driver would meet with the administrative little office there and with his manifest and get his check, and that would kind of be how the functionality of that back then. So we went through a historic restoration build up there. So as you know, it took years of architect and site visits on, you have to leave this wall, you have to leave this room, you have to build around this and build around that, which we accomplished very well. For those of you that saw it, I would assume that you agree with me there. So I personally would like for this building to stay how it is. It is a true landmark to this town, and not just my opinion, but I think most of public opinion, although we don't have many here. Phil, he agrees. So I don't really have much more, although Alex, you were mentioning that most of the determination comes from exterior architecture and not too much the interior as the Queen Anne.
No, I was just explaining that the property owner doesn't have to include the interior as part of their landmark designation. A lot of people don't naturally, which is a lot of times a disappointment if that's, because a lot of times.
So it doesn't hold, so in other words, and correct me if I'm wrong, if we just went for a local landmark with an exterior, we're exact how we were. Recreation of the Woolworth 5 and Dime sign as exactly how it was. Restoration work of the terracotta, all the windows are original. I mean, should this application just be exterior and not even bring up the interior and just get the landmark?
I think it's, I don't know that, to me, I don't think we can necessarily divorce them when we're considering the landmark designation itself. But you don't have to include the interior in terms of the protection that the designation offers. Do you know what I mean? Like, you could designate it, and then if it's exterior only, then that's all you're required to come before this board to get permission to do anything to the exterior for,
be a little bit significant, but not so much more so than maybe other buildings. If that's interesting. But in here, they must have proposed what would be significant interior, right?
Well, I think it's just generally we would like get into the weeds on that in the final report. It's not totally fleshed out for us here, but, and there has been a lot of remodeling. Now, I think obviously what you're saying is that you've done a lot of restoration work, or, rehab work, and I think that, your reasoning to want to protect that work makes sense to me. You invested in a historic property and you wanted to retain the, rehabilitation work that you put into it. That makes, I mean, I think that's certainly valid. I would like to keep looking at Annie, because Annie used to work for the State Historic Preservation Office, and they always advise us on landmark designations, and, not that I think everybody has a, meaningful perspective here for sure. I just,
I think one of the challenges here is that this is a late expression of the Art Deco. The Art Deco really had its peak in Asheville in the 1920s, and Henry Gaines was working in the 1920s. And one of the things that we would expect to see in a landmark designation report, which your consultant is going to know to provide, is a comparative analysis of the Woolworth building against other Art Deco buildings. I've lived in Asheville for almost 12 years now. I worked for the State Historic Preservation Office for 9.5, and now I'm a private consultant who also happens to write local landmark reports. And from what I know of downtown Asheville, from having worked here for a while, is that I think comparatively, we will find that it does not rise to the top as far as special significance is concerned. That's buildings like the S&W or City Hall. When you look at architectural significance as a property is representative of a style, there are other, perhaps better examples that are more, they have greater architectural elan, in part because they were built at the height of the development period when the Art Deco was most venerated, if you would, in greatest use. By the late 1930s, we start to see the Art Deco distilled down to more surface features, less polychroming like you see in the Crest building and the S&W. And so if you were to look at this building and say, how does it rise to the top, you're really only going to point to the exterior. And when you look at the exterior, or what are the most expressive, what are the features of it that are the most Art Deco? It's those features on the exterior. And when you compare it to other examples, you'll find that other examples have greater exterior ornament and also interior ornament. Does that mean it's not eligible for its architecture? I think that you need greater analysis of the universe of resources that comprise its context. The same, I think, goes for associative significance and its relationship to the civil rights movement, its importance within the civil rights movement, because there are other, that we know from the African American Heritage Survey, there are other properties in Asheville that were associated with civil rights training. And I can't remember the name of the jewelry store on Eagle Street that was one good example. As Alex mentioned, the loss of the original counter is important, and if that's what makes it significant for its civil rights associations, then I would look to preserving that, whatever remains, and keeping that interior designation, because that ensures the preservation of the feature that is most associated with that event or those events. So I think for me, we need more information in order to really make a well-defined decision. However, if your goal is outright preservation, then I think a more effective tool for that would be an easement or covenant on the property with PSABC, because that would be a deed-based agreement that it is more effective at ensuring long-term preservation. It has a lot of the same regulatory components, and it has a tax benefit as well, as I understand it. It's different from the benefit, the direct benefit of the 50% property tax deferral that comes with local landmark designation.
I have one thought about the associative topic that I wanted to pose to the group. You know, it occurred to me that 39 is an interesting time to build a building here, right? Like how many buildings were getting built in Asheville immediately after the Depression? And I wonder if that might be an area to explore. I'm not an architectural historian, but I think that was one thing I was thinking on. I was curious to know, like, well, what was happening in Asheville in the late 1930s or right after the Depression? That might be one thing that your consultant could consider as part of bolstering the case for this, and how, as Annie pointed out, how that style evolved past its prime and how this fits into other buildings of that same kind of specific window of time.
Yeah. By the late 1930s, we're seeing the streamline moderne. So Art Deco is starting to kind of fade away into the streamline moderne. By the same architect at the same time, exactly. So how much of the design is rooted in Woolworth's, corporate or programmatic, desires, or some kind of distilled version of the Art Deco, when things like Citizen Vinyl. When was Citizen Vinyl built? Yeah. By which point a more popular, innovative, stylistic architectural designs were at the forefront of the field. And so I think by 39 we start to see, just because it's Art Deco doesn't mean that it's cutting edge. It has to do with where it falls within that movement and when that movement reached the height of its popularity in a given community.
Yeah, I think tying those two things together would be really interesting, because right now it's just the commercial development of downtown and the Art Deco, distinguished Art Deco facade. So like fleshing that out and how those evolution of those two things in that specific window of time might be an interesting story to tell.
And I mean, it's easy to say that something is a distinguished Art Deco, with no offense and no disrespect. It's easy to say that something is a distinguished Art Deco facade, but what does that mean? And I think to understand what that means, we need to have the broader context.
Yeah, I mean, from a historical viewpoint, I think that the lunch counter is very important. I mean, you note in here that there was a whole series of cities in North Carolina that had these sit-ins, in this building that, I know the counter is not the same, but that is, to me, significant. There's one thing, there are buildings where they're organizing things, but this was an active event that took place there. And I think that's another important aspect. I mean, you've got, I think people could imagine, I don't know how much detail they would not notice wasn't there, since you can't put the original back, right? It was sold before you bought it. But you have some of the history up on the wall there. I'm a historian, so naturally that's going to appeal to me. But I think for people to come in that building and note and be educated that this was a part of the civil rights movement, and Asheville, contributed, maybe they planned it at the building you're talking about, and there could be some kind of connection. Maybe some of these people are still alive. I mean, I just think that could be a way from oral history, something that could help make your application more robust from a historical viewpoint. I take Annie's point with the architecture, but something important happened in this building historically for people of color in Asheville. I don't know where else I don't know Black history here, but that Woolworths is known for that.
Yeah, the sit-in was in Greensboro, and then it came right here.
Right.
within
So
days.
that
I think would be important.
And it reinforces that memory of Greensboro every time someone walks into a Woolworth and sees a lunch counter. There's an association and curiosity that I think is wonderful. That
Oh, yeah, we get it all day.
yeah,
I mean, that changed history. That,
And I don't know, it feels visceral when you're in the space.
it does, it does.
I mean, to be honest, because I hadn't been in there in so long, that I felt like the aspects of integrity were a lot stronger than maybe what I had pictured, just given that, a lot of times over, many years of differing uses within buildings. But I feel like I really did get a sense of what the space had been like when you gave us your awesome tour. You
If-
had a lot of awesome information to share with us on the tour. So.
Alex, have you talked with Hannah Beckman-Black about this yet? I would encourage either the property owner or you as staff to reach out to Hannah. So hypothetically speaking, if you proceed with a landmark designation report, that will go to the State Historic Preservation Office. They act as subject matter experts, reviewing and advising Alex and this body on the completeness of the report and whether or not they believe a sufficient case has been made for special significance. The person who will review that application or that designation report is Hannah Beckman-Black. She is the preservation specialist in the Western Office of the State Historic Preservation Office, whose territory includes Buncombe County. Hannah is available to kind of advise on what she would expect to see in that designation report. And it might be useful to kind of get her read on special significance and, what, if she thinks it might have special significance, what that report should include.
And I'm happy to coordinate a meeting
Sure.
with her as well, because I'd like to be part of the discussion and hear her thoughts too.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna go forward with the application, so I'd love the guidance on honing it in, so it's touching the right bases.
I like Commissioner McDonald's comments about the time period, how a national retailer must have torn down something that was already in this
Yeah,
prominent
it was like an old hotel or something that burned down. It was all made out of wood.
Well, yeah, I think that sort of how Asheville was growing at a record way, and how commercial retail started, national retail chains were moving in prominent locations, and how that sign you see in other towns the same way. It's an important part of its story to help illustrate the significance with its location.
I see where the storefronts were rebuilt in the 1960s. Is there any documentation of what the facade looked like before that storefront renovation?
I think the only difference in the actual storefront was there was a vertical sign, I believe, that you could see if you were walking, up the sidewalk. But other than that, it was, in the 60s, it was an interior change. For instance, in the Woolworth, in their original plans, they had the staircases that went to the downstairs were in the corners, one in each corner. Those were closed off and they made a grand staircase in the center. It was all interior. As far as exterior goes, there really weren't any changes. The two main entrances were there. The side entrance on the south side, original terrazzo and stairwell that goes up that's never been changed to the top floor where the administrative offices were. So I don't know of any visual change to the front facade. pictures that we have of it, you know, with old cars, 1930s cars, and the trolley tracks went right in front. I think the facade all looks exactly the same.
What is the framing around the storefront windows? Is that like a powder-coated aluminum?
Powder-coated.
You know, I would expect to see in like a 1939 storefront, kind of the silver, like the nickel,
Yeah.
what's the, like
It's aluminum.
a silver, you know, and the tile, that small tile
The blue tile.
on the
around.
bulkhead, I would look very closely at that to see if that blue tile is 39 or if that's later. That material is not something that I'm really familiar with from that time period, so I wonder if it may have had a renovation in the 70s or 80s that maybe we aren't really seeing today, you know, just kind of accepting it as it is. So I would have your consultant look very closely at the exterior materials. Something about the proportion of the panes around the entrances seems not 1939 to me. So I would just look closely at that and see if there's any record, even in the newspapers, you know, the new Woolworth building open, and see if there's any documentation there.
Okay.
Any other
Okay.
comments, thoughts?
There's plaster detailing on the ceilings too.
No real detailing. It was
It's
just
just on the edge.
it's just trout out. Yeah, the detail is just plaster crown molding all around and all around the interior pilings. Yeah. Is that it?
All right, so are we good? And I can follow up with you guys and we can circle back with Clay and Hannah. Or just Hannah or whatever works for y'all. Or I can just send you her contact, whatever your preference is. I'll send you an email. Thanks. Okay. All right.
And Alex, it might be helpful as well for us to know what buildings in Asheville, what commercial buildings in Asheville are local landmark designated for their architectural design, and to see how those arguments are written in the landmark designation reports. And I would say that is specifically for buildings designated for their Art Deco architecture, but I think it might be helpful for any buildings, you know, kind of designated because they're outstanding examples of a style.
I will look, but I think that probably like, I know the S&W designation report is probably going to be the
Yeah.
National Register nomination. That's old and probably didn't do more of what we do today, which is
Yeah.
kind of plugging into the larger context of the style and potentially other development at the time. But I'll see what I can come up with.
Okay.
I found a few, I've been looking at going down the list, like the Louis Mueller Griffith House in Grove Park, but that isn't commercial, so I don't know if that changes.
It's not Art Deco though.
No.
Is that like, we don't have a lot that were designated for
Not
Art
Art
Deco.
Deco,
Just
no.
this one, this building, SW.
First Baptist?
First Baptist is not a landmark.
It's not a landmark, okay. What,
Yeah, I said this one.
Harbor Gate.
what's it called?
First Baptist.
Oh, okay.
Any case, I'm trying to find some additional info for discussion.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you guys.
Thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
I'll be brief. We had was it week before last or last week?
Week before.
Okay. We went to the Montford Neighborhood Association meeting. Annie, Sue, myself, our planning director, and Jennifer Cathy from the SHPO, who is their restoration specialist. So the purpose, we were asked there to come give an overview of the role of the commission. I think I've mentioned in a past meeting or two that there are some folks in the neighborhood that are interested in potentially posing amendments to the design standards to you all. And a survey went out from a couple of residents. It wasn't from the neighborhood association. It wasn't sponsored by the city and was clarified not sponsored by the HRC either. And so we tried to kind of be more, zoomed out on the topic. We didn't get in the weeds on their survey and the data they collected. We just told them what the process would be for, or inform people on the process for amending the standards, it's not defined in our ordinance. It's not dictated by state statute. What it says in the Montford standards specifically is that the commission staff or a community member can initiate amendments to the standards
does the meeting have to be noticed? I mean, it is a meeting of more than,
We do usually, just
Okay.
because anybody could attend,
yeah,
and we're all, here all together.
yeah.
Even though you're not deliberating on matters. You don't have to stream it.
Can we just notice it on our website if it's
Yeah.
a special meeting? We don't have to, okay, that's what
Yeah.
I think we did, I think we've done that in the past.
Yeah, like 48 hours, yeah. On the website.
So that's all my sharing. Anybody else?
Anything else, anybody?
Okay.
Motion to
Move to adjourn.